work in China next year? The first American films ever to be made on the mainland? She said it as if it were a question, an invitation for Paco to say he'd heard about these movies. It hasn't happened yet, Mandanian had said, his first recognition of Paco. Goddamn chinks are as bad as anybody else when it comes to putting up the money. Once he'd found out what Mandanian's business was, Paco told him why he'd come out to California. Now he was beginning to regret it. "You're not worried? Pick up some guy you don't know, let him drive you around like this?" Paco said. The guy was leaning back in a corner of the seat, still had most of his clothes on, his arms crossed behind his head as she worked on him. "Should I be worried, Paco? You told me you came from an old ranching family. I'm thinking salt of the earth and all that." "That's right," Paco said. "Salt of the earth." Another mistake, telling him about his family, the ranch that had once covered 96 sections of West Texas prime, now shriveled to a fraction of that, and what was left the subject of endless wrangling among the heirs. Paco turned back to the road, narrow road that ran along the very spine of the mountains. For 2 years he'd never seen past the lip of a cement block wall. Now, one second he'd have a breathtaking view of the LA basin. The next, they'd swing around, give him an endless vista of the lights of the San Fernando Valley. On top of that, there was what was going on in the back seat. Though the edge of his own lust had fallen away. Too weird for a Texas boy, Paco? It was still something to behold. Less than a week outside, out of Texas at last. Look what he'd fallen into. Material, Paco. View it as material. So how does a fellow from the joint get into writing screenplays, Paco? How does that work? Paco glanced in the mirror, something he hadn't brought up with Mandanian. The woman up on the seat now, atop the little guy and squirming in place, her eyes closed, lower lip caught in her teeth. Paco glanced away. Maybe his lust's not all the way gone after all. "What joint are we talking about?" "You don't want to discuss it, it's okay with me." Paco heard some fleshy noises from back there. He thought about slamming on the brakes, see who yelped. "Richard made San Quentin Blues," the woman said, her voice breathy. "He researched it. By the time it was over, he'd spent more time in prison than Michael Milken." Paco glanced in the mirror. He'd never heard of the movie, but he knew something about prison. Looking at it was one thing. Living it, another. "It's the way you all walk," Mandanian said. "Always watching without seeming to, always ready for the next bad scene. Quite distinctive, really. You took me for a con, and you have me driving your car?" "Some of us are amused by these things," Mandanian said. "I don't think you're a bad person, Paco," the woman, her breathing labored. "When we saw you walk in, Richard said, 'There's a guy who's just come out of the joint.' I said you looked cute." Paco shook his head. He'd heard it was strange out here, but no one had prepared him for this. "Some guy came through the facility, did a weekend writers' conference," Paco said finally. "He read my stuff. Said there was grit. Said there was a movie in it." "Do tell," the little guy said. "What did you do anyway, stick up a 7-Eleven? Paco glanced in the mirror again. "This getting you off, grinding my ass too?" Mandanian laughed. "I'm just trying to find out what you're made of, Paco. See if you've got what it takes." "Takes for what?" "For whatever," Mandanian said. Paco shrugged. What the hell, he could stand a little crap. Was even getting used to it. He'd scored a few drinks, got the feel of driving a car again. How long before he'd be able to get a driver's license?